Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by author and economic analyst here at WAMP, John Sneisen, and we've got a lot to go into today, and as many of you might have seen, we did a video about a couple months ago regarding the vast exodus from California, and we're going to go into that a bit more today regarding New York City and California. It's a really big issue today as we're seeing the highest taxed places seeing vast exoduses, and that includes Illinois, New Jersey, and many other states as well. But starting off with New York, we have this article out of Zero Hedge that says 277 people a day leave New York. And as it goes into, New Yorkers are fleeing the state in droves due to high taxes. The result is an overabundance of homes few can afford. And you can see a map here. And as it continues, it says, Bloomberg reports Manhattan's flood of new condos could take 6 years to sell. Manhattan is glutted with even more luxury condos than most apartment shoppers realize. The borough has 7,050 unsold newly built units, according to a report by Halstead Development Marketing. The bulk of those almost 6,000 haven't been formally listed for sale, creating an under-the-radar shadow inventory. The secret supply is a heavy weight on a market in which sales, especially of higher-end properties, have slowed to a crawl. It would take 74 months more than 6 years to clear all of Manhattan's unsold units at the pace of contracts in 2019, the report shows. Despite the allegedly booming economy, there is little interest in moving to Manhattan. Rather, people have had enough of taxes. This is not at all surprising. New York, California, Illinois, and New Jersey are in the same boat. Those are the top 4 states with domestic out-migration. And of course, as it says, the Washington Times reports wealthy Americans flee high-tax states, take billions with them. And I quote, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich leave. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, lamented in February as he announced an anticipated revenue plunge in the Empire State. And now what do? The $10,000 limit has left governors in high-tax states steaming and has sent Democratic politicians scrambling to try to offer breaks to the same wealthy Americans they usually demand pay their quote-unquote fair share. And I quote, it is having a big impact, said Chris Edwards, tax policy director at the Cato Institute. There was migration before, but there has always been disputes about the causes with the data. Now I suspect a lot of people are just getting fed up. The exodus is just beginning, as it says. Please consider New York, California high-tax state exodus just beginning. The cap on state and local tax deductions has already begun to drive some residents away from high-tax states like New York and New Jersey, but experts say that trend is only going to intensify. It took a few months for taxpayers to realize the dollar implications until they actually filed their tax returns this year. Ellen Goldenberg, a principal at Friedman LLP, told Fox Business. It quantified the impact of the loss of the SALT deduction when people saw it in front of their eyes on their tax returns. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act introduced a number of reforms, including the notorious $10,000 cap on state and local tax deductions, which has caused Americans to look into establishing legal primary residences in states where they can limit their liabilities, and they call it the Great Tax Exodus. Let's get into this a bit, John. We're gonna get into California in a moment, but let's focus on New York for a second and this massive tax racket they have there, and also its relation overall to the economy, to the central banks, to inflation, and how much that creates vast poverty in the United States. Can you go into that a bit?
Well, first of all, when it comes to cities, of course, they will always be the highest inflationary places in the world because there's more people there, there's more money chasing commodities. So, of course, that's going to be a burden that any city would have compared to living on the countryside, no matter what you try to do. Mm-hmm. So that's a natural one. Then, of course, when you look at the taxation of these cities, of course, let's take a look at the top 10 there, Josh. You mentioned a few of them there. But actually, California has only 11 in taxes, but it's still really high. You look at New York, has an average tax burden. An average is talking about state tax. We're not talking about
Right.
any local taxes in New York itself or all that. But the total tax burden in New York for statewide is 12.97. Hawaii is second with 11.71. Maine 10.84. Vermont, then Minnesota, then Rhode Island. Then New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, Iowa, and then on the 11th place you have California. But so what you're seeing is usually an exodus from these big tax states. You saw an exodus as soon as idiots over there in France had a massive wealth tax of 75%, or I think it was as high as 100%. Well, all the people that were productive, the ultra rich that might not be as productive, but we're talking about the business people, that running small businesses. They actually fled the country because they were, forced out of their businesses if they stayed in the country. So of course they left, and now. And then, of course, the productive people that, the more they work, the more you get taxed. It's the craziest, tax strategy ever that governments is, basically punishing you for working hard. So that is what happens in a nation or anywhere in the world, the province, whatever it is. People will go out of that province when they get punished. And of course, taxes, Josh, is, the amount of taxes you get taxed. So let's say you get taxed 40%, you're a 40% slave to the government. That's what you are. So you become a slave. Like all what taxes are is just collections on, being able to live on the land, basically, because in most places around the world, there is some form of taxes. Now, interestingly enough, Josh, I have a list here of some places that don't have taxes. Of course, some of them are oil countries in the Middle East, but I thought it would be worth a mention because some of them actually are, nice places to live. Like Bahamas, for example, has a 0% income tax rate. So that might be a good place for people to hang out. Then you got, let's see here, of course, you got Bahrain, Brunei, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then United Arab Emirates. Those we know that, basically they live off of their oil. But then you have Cayman Islands, and yeah, that's it. It's basically, it's Bahamas, Bermuda, and Cayman Islands that are the nations with zero income tax. So that's good places to live. Then you actually are not a slave to the government over there. I think I'm not sure how much people pay in property taxes and so on, but any form of tax that's around is a form of enslavement of the population without the real consent.
Right. I mean, people are, and we've seen this on the market in the past, people are more willing to pay voluntarily into things when they have more money in their pocket. Their purchasing power isn't destroyed. And I mean, taxation is theft. And the fact that we are working, most of us, 50% of the year for the government shows that 50% of the year we're doing hard labor for the state entity that blows up kids in the Middle East and to pay off the interest on the debt, which is such a crazy scam. It's unbelievable that anyone puts up with it, but it shows how weak we've become. But I do want to note something else in this article, John, that says a great hit tax exodus. And it says New York leads all U.S. metro areas as the largest net loser with 277 people moving every day, more than double the exodus of 132 just 1 year ago. Los Angeles and Chicago were next with triple-digit daily losses of 201 and 161 residents, respectively. In 10 of the top 100 metros, deaths exceed births. Thus, without migration, these cities would be shrinking. Half of the 10 are located in Florida. In 11 more cities, mostly in Utah and Texas, there are more than twice as many births as deaths. Provo, which ranks first in births and last in deaths, had a 5:1 ratio. And we've also talked about, we're recently seeing on the New York skyline these pencil buildings. They're super skinny buildings that we've reported on before that are really demonstrable of the massive housing bubble that New Yorkers face. I mean, people can't afford to live there. It's crazy. You talk to a cab driver in New York and they all live in like the Bronx, and even that's almost unaffordable. And they're like, yeah, a bachelor anywhere within, Manhattan is worth like $3,000 a month or more. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely insane. Now, I want to get into California California, because as we've mentioned before, there are more people in Las Vegas, in Nevada, that were born in California than were born in Nevada. This is becoming a huge exodus out of California. People in Arizona are feeling it too, and it's unbelievable the level of this exodus, and it really does demonstrate the kind of situation we're dealing with. And we're going to go back to John in a moment, but first I just want to note from this Zero Hedge article, so many people have fled California, the state may lose multiple seats in Congress. And between 2018 and 2019, as it says, about 203,000 people left California in that period, a result of the state's shifting migration pattern and economic strains that are making it harder to afford living here. New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Louisiana also saw large losses to other states. California's potential loss in reapportionment, which will be determined by next year's census count, would drop the state's number of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives from 53 to 52, said William Frey, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, according to the New York Times. So, John, what do you think about all of that?
It sounds like Nancy Pelosi will be without a job, Josh. Of course, she's not going to lose her job. She's not going to be on that losing side, of course, because she's going to weasel her way to keep her job. But anyways, it's really funny how, the governments work, where, you get an exodus, suddenly you got less power. But the most important things here is what we're seeing as we're seeing a problem with, mass movements into cities. And then cities becomes too big, they become bloated, they become overtaxed, heavy government,
Sounds like Agenda 2030.
Yeah, and this is what happens throughout time as well. We got to remember I think I talked to Louis Mises. He interviewed me for the Dollar Vigilante newsletter. And we were talking about the actual, over history, talking all the way back to, the Mayan Egyptians and all these people. They moved into centralized cities. And then over time, they're starting to forget that they actually need real things like commodities and food from agriculture. And then you have on the agricultural sector, all the people there are, in their 60s, 70s soon on an average. So you're seeing the agricultural sector dying off, basically, where, we're growing and more and more people in these cities that are very dependent on, having access from agricultural sector in the rural areas. And they forget that they actually need and are dependent on those, and where that food even comes from. Kids today, go and ask them, they don't even know what vegetables are anymore, because they've never seen, anybody grow in the garden, which, was pretty, well known back, just 20, 30 years ago.
Well, I mean, they're like, oh, these things have just been put on my table. I guess they were just sent by God or something, or by mommy and daddy government or whatever. That people have become insanely dependent, John.
Yeah, and what we got to see now, remember the Great Depression, about 90% of people were kind of self-sufficient. They had their own gardens. They, supplied their own food in some sort of way. So it didn't make it as terrible as it could have been. But now, you have the opposite almost, where almost 90% are living in the cities and are dependent on that 3-day food supply that's in the stores. And then what are you going to do during a Grand Depression when the monetary system collapses? Because it's going to go, I believe it's going to go in a hyperinflationary rate. But first, we actually have had a deflationary pressure ever since 2008. But what the central banks have done, and you talked briefly about that at the start, they have printed money with the help of the government, with massive spending, in California and everywhere through the government spending. And then that money gets into the banking system, and then that gets spent into non-productive assets, a lot of real estate investing going on, and investing in all financialized assets. So what you're seeing is, instead of actually doing productive things and creating great things for society, we've focused on financializing products, making money with money, and then you don't really need to work anymore or do anything. You can just sit on your butt and then constantly watch the Dow Jones or whatever it is going up. And now we are starting to see, like, we're not there yet. I just working on my final touches on my report that I'm doing. But in the what I found interesting was that the PE ratios on the stock exchange, S&P 500, the 500 biggest corporations in the United States, have reached above the other peaks back, except for 2000 and 2008. But it's on its way up there, and you're starting to see more and more euphoria in the markets where they believe that, oh, the Fed is going to take care of us no matter what happens. But when that happens, you can buy up all this stuff, and the deflationary pressure is there, bro. Everybody's defaulting on their debt. Meanwhile, the Fed is still shoving more and more money out there. There's going to be a breaking point where they're going to have to just print a tremendous amount of money to keep deflation from happening, and then suddenly it just breaks. It's like a earthquake. And then hyperinflation just takes over,
right?
And it's game over for the U.S. dollar.
Absolutely. And I want to make it clear that anyone that lives in California, anyone that lives basically anywhere in a major city today can see massive homelessness. There's homelessness everywhere. And the root cause of that being the central banking system, the printing of currency, the vast poverty that comes from the inflation. They print it out of thin air. They charge you the interest on the debt, extort you for it. The price of living goes up. It's not that the bread is going up in value. It's that the money is going down in value. And with that said, there's all this homelessness in California, and then people in California keep putting vinegar in the wounds and going, well, maybe if we raise the wages aren't the issue. It's the inflation that's the issue. You can raise wages all day, kick businesses out of town, make it more difficult.
Venezuela raised it 3,000%. It didn't help them, did it?
No, it didn't. And again, like the employment rate, people keep saying the employment rate's great. No, it's hidden in the labor force participation rate. It's not great. And even Stephen Moore, who is one of the main advisors to Trump, who we recently interviewed here at WAM back in July, I guess that wasn't that recent, but anyway, back in July, admitted that we were right. He conceded to us when he's like, yeah, the jobs numbers are great. And I'm like, what about the labor force participation rate? It doesn't seem very realistic that you're going to claim that job numbers are great when we're seeing this massive rise of homelessness. And he's like, oh, well, I guess you're right there. We need to fix that. I mean, the fact of the matter is this is a predatory system that's based on debt and dependence, and they both play into each other. And the two things that play into each other that also are good for us are responsibility and freedom. And we need to break free from the chains that so many of us revere and stop looking for government to fix the problems of government and central banks. So we're going to close this off right away. I want to say the usual, food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. Gold and silver is wealth insurance, in my opinion, not investment advice, but it is historically a preservation of wealth and wealth insurance that we should be looking into. And of course, decentralized, properly, fundamentally useful cryptocurrencies and blockchain infrastructure technology. John, do you want to close it off and give us bottom line before we go?
Yeah, the bottom line here is that the government and the central banks, the more you print money, the more death and destruction you'll have, the more homeless people you'll create. So that's basically the end game here is you will get more homeless people. And as taxes and inflation goes up, people become more and more desperate. And look at what's happening in France, where people are telling media that they're starving. And when it comes to that point, when people are starving, when they can't get food on the table that is essential for any human being, that's when the revolution starts.
Right. Of course, as many of you might know, though the mainstream media is not covering really, there are massive rallies happening in France, and I guess the mainstream media just decided it's not interesting anymore. Just like they stopped deciding that Epstein didn't kill himself was interesting anymore, and whatever. Maybe they're just focused on promoting war to prop up the monetary system. Anyway, the point is we need to free ourselves, free our minds, free our money, decentralize everything, and live as a self-sustainable, responsible human being. That's how I'll leave that off. Make sure to write below in the comments, "End the Fed." Comment "End the Fed" in the comments. Helps us know that you've been watching all along and helps with the algorithm. Make sure to press like too and check those links below. There's lots of ways you can help independent media as we are kind of going under right now. But hey, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and we are working very hard towards prevailing as an independent media, regardless of the way YouTube attacks us, shadow bans us, and demonetizes us. There's lots of good things on the horizon. We just need your help during that transition. There is a Teespring link so you can get Wham merchandise at our Teespring store, linked below as well, including End the Fed and F the Fed shirts. It's statism is cancer and stuff like that. Nobody for president 2020. Anyway, we got lots of stuff coming up on the horizon, so stay tuned for the latest videos at Wham. You got to check back, press to be notified, but keep checking back anyway because YouTube probably won't tell you. And nonetheless, we're moving forward. Find us on float.app, flote.app. And anyway, I appreciate you going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at Wham, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on float.app, that's flote.app, at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at Wham, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.